Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
Welcome to She Talks Peace, a podcast that highlights the role of women peace builders around the world in bringing lasting peace and security to communities. Eavesdrop on their communities and get to know their stories. From the Philippines to Malaysia, from Indonesia to Palestine, from Myanmar to the United States. Their dreams and hopes for a world without violence and a world where every woman and girl can be whoever she wants to be. Hosted by Amina Rasul Bernardo, President of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. This is She Talks Peace.
Salam, dear listeners. This is Amina Rasul of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, welcoming you to another interesting episode of She Talks Peace. My co-host this month is from Sabah, Malaysia. Say hello.
Hi, everybody, again. And I'm Ayesa, and I'm a lecturer at University Malaysia Sabah. And I've been living in Malaysia, I think, for the last 14 years now. Yeah, so I'm glad that I could be part of this She Talks Peace, because there's certainly a lot of stories that we can share about peace building in Southeast Asia.
Glad to have you on board, Ayesa. So tell me, what's happening in Sabah? Are people talking about our claim after the French court decided in favor of the Sultan's heirs? According to the news, Ayesa, a French court ordered the Malaysian government to pay $14.9 billion to the legal descendants of Jamalul Kiram II, then Sultan of Sulu. And this award is connected to a legal case launched by the heirs of the Sultan to win compensation over land in Sabah. And my grandfather, the late Haji Butu, who was the first Muslim senator in the country, was then prime minister of the Sultan. So yes, I am one of the heirs. What do you think?
You're going to be rich. Anyway, yeah, seriously, Amina. Yeah, of course, everybody here in Malaysia, especially the Sabahan people in Sabah, are very concerned about this case. Everybody knows, it's not a secret that there continues to be a Sabah claim dispute, among in some areas of Sabah. So it's not the whole of Sabah that's being claimed, but some areas, mainly the east coast part of Sabah. It's a historical claim. Yeah, but when it comes to this ongoing case, yeah, it's really interesting. Personally, I'm also carefully monitoring it, given that at present we all know that well, there is a decision by this arbitration court. We also know for a fact that it is very difficult to enforce. And then I'm aware that the Malaysian government, of course, will be contesting that arbitration court decision. So it's going to be a long legal battle. And to some extent, actually glad that this claim issue is being taken into court. Whether it is the proper court or not the right court to be taken to, but then again, it's better than having a confrontation or an escalated conflict because of this claim. So we just hope that nothing of the Lahad-Datu incident way back in 2013 will happen again. Because of course, as women in the ASEAN Women Peace Registry, that is not what we want to happen in our ASEAN region. So hopefully, not only will our governments tackle this issue, but also we hope that more people in the peace building community can also, think about this case and how do we actually go about go into perhaps a dialogue process among the people themselves.
Yeah, yes, but I keep imagining what I could do if Malaysia does pay the heirs. The first thing I would do would be to set up a fund that would provide grant to women peace builders at the community level and to support our advocacy, our research. Because can you just imagine getting hundreds of millions of dollars as your share? You know, we can dream. Dreaming
Well,
is
so you are
free.
going to be part of
But
that
yeah,
share.
yeah. I mean, we can always dream. But you know what, Ayesa? There are actually women's organizations that have managed to raise funds, lots of funds, to run their own programs, like Indonesia's Aisyah. Did you know that they're already like 100 years old? They were established in 1917 as an Islamic faith-based women's organization under Muhammadiyah. And as you very well know, Muhammadiyah is one of the two largest Islamic organizations in Indonesia and in the world. Asia contributes to women's empowerment by strengthening women's participation in all aspects of social and economic life. I actually visited them years ago, Ayesa, and I was so amazed that they were running hospitals and schools.
Okay. Where is this based? Where is their headquarters?
Indonesia.
Which
They're
part?
they're they're in Indonesia, and I think I went to Yogyakarta to visit some of their operations. But we're really lucky today because we're going to be joined by our dear friend and colleague who's also with us at the ASEAN Women for Peace Registry, and who's with Aisha. This is Dr. Arifa Rahmawati, who's a senior researcher at the Center for Security and Peace Studies of Gadjah Muda University of Yogyakarta, Indonesia. She's a member of the Economic Board of Asia. And Arifa's main research interest is on gender, conflict, and peace building. Arifa was Indonesia's coordinator and principal researcher of their gender conflict and peace building project. I think it was a 6-year research project. And that particular research aimed to investigate gendered conflict dynamics and peace building initiatives at the community, state, and international levels in Indonesia and Nigeria. Arifa's dissertation title is Gender Contestation on the Reintegration Process of the Achinese Female Ex-Combatants. Welcome to She Talks Peace, Dr. Arifa Rahmawati, our dear friend, Dr. Arifa.
Hi, Mom Amina and Aisha, my dear friend during the Bangkok meeting last month.
Hi, Arifa.
Remember?
See you.
Don't
Aisha,
get us
yeah,
started on Bangkok, Arifa.
it was really fun. Thank you for inviting me, and it is an honor to be here with you too.
Yeah, Arifa, first of all, can we ask you, how do you pronounce your organization name?
Okay,
Can
it's good
I
question.
say that? Or is that like my name, Ayesa or Aisha?
I guess it is similar with your name, only different pronunciation. We address more on the Aisha.
Aisha.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So we have at the end. So but I think the meaning is similar with your name actually, Ayesha. Yeah,
Okay.
only different syllable and the pronunciation, but it is Aisha we call it. And
Okay.
thank you for introducing the Aisha, Ma'am Amina. I'm glad that you already visit our town, Yogyakarta, as well as visit some of our program in supporting people at the grassroots level, and also filling the gap what our government can support or provide the basic need of the people, health and education. Maybe just for your information, right now Asia has already 3 universities
Wow.
in Indonesia. Yeah, and more than 11,000 school from the early age of school, kindergarten, as well as the what do you call primary school, and then university.
So
Where
definitely,
the
yes, if I win my share from Sabah of hundreds of millions of dollars, Arifa doesn't need doesn't need the fund, right?
so
We'll just
Arifa,
provide it to
can
other
I
groups. What do you think, Ayesa?
can I ask where is the University of Asia?
I see. Yeah. The university right now, one in Yogyakarta, the oldest one, and then the second, it is in certain part of Sulawesi, and another one just opened 3 months ago. It was in Papua. It is in Papua.
Oh, that's a good thing that you have
Yeah,
been you open a branch in Papua because that is
yeah.
another interesting place for AWPR. You know, since we are
Yes,
interested
it
to
is.
do
It is. Yeah,
building
yeah, yeah.
in conflict affected
But
areas.
um, but Arifa, Ayesa and I are really interested in that research project that you did and
Yeah.
your dissertation on gender
Mm-hmm.
contestation and reintegration of female ex-combatants in
Yeah.
Aceh. So let me start by asking you, why did these Muslim women become combatants? How did they become combatants?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Amina. Well, first of all, I was lucky because I met with this group of female ex-combatant that at the time when we start the program, the project in 2014, we didn't realize that there exist. So as we all know, usually women involvement in conflict are really pushed aside as victim and a passive actor, something like that. We didn't realize that there was a group of women who very active in doing or joining the what do you call guerrilla. They were in the jungle, they were in the forest, and they train as a military women, something like that. And they did also fighting with the Indonesian military at the time. So we were so lucky that we found them, and then finally I personally then go deeper and take that opportunity for my personal research, for my dissertation. And it was very interesting because I tried to compare the gender situation during the violent conflict and after the peace has been signed in 2005, actually. Yeah. So answering your question, I mean, why they joining the guerrilla and violence against the Indonesian military? I think I found at least 3 factors that can be push, pull, as well as can legitimate their activities. When I try to understand what is the push factor, then I think first the push factor is because kind of what we call as the biographical availability. Yeah, they have biography that make them available to join. It is like the history of the family who involved in the opposition movement before,
I
and
mean,
as well as
Arifa, you mean like their families were already involved as
yes,
combatants?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Because if we look at the Aceh history, before the Free Aceh movement, there was another movement against the
Mm-hmm.
Indonesian government, and
Mm-hmm.
most all of the female combatant that I met, their grandparent actually joining that movement before.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
somehow they know the history of the involvement into that opposition movement. And some of them got some pressure or the family that as our family already joined, now you have to join. Even though you are a girl, you are a woman, and most of them was quite young, from the 15 to 24 years old when they joining the guerrilla, and they get pressure and also support from the family, friend, and neighbor. And the neighbor usually they are so proud when a girl joining the opposition movement, something like that. And another push factor is kind of sense of insecurity as a result of 29 years of
Mhm.
economic and social deprivation
Uh-huh.
of the conflict. Yeah. So some of them say that, well, um, um, I feel safe when I went to the jungle with the gum. If not, then I will be sexual targeted by the Indonesian military, something like that.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, that's the way they try secure themselves economically and also physically. So that's why they
Security.
joining. Yeah, for the security reason actually. That's the push factor, and then also the pull factor. It is very interesting because some of them say that I'm really like to wear the uniform and carrying the arm, the gun. I feel so powerful with that.
Power. Okay.
Yeah, the
Yes.
power. So, and
Mm.
the portrait imagining as masculinity and power were in their head. So that's why they're
Mhm.
very proud to be part of the military wing of the GUM, something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also some of them, before they joining, they dream that they someday they will become police officer or military officer. Some of them tried to be, but they fail because
Mhm.
the requirement is very high. Yeah, so when they couldn't join the Indonesian military and police, then when the GAM they joining the GAM, they can directly become the police and military without any screening, without
Mhm.
any regulation, something like that. So I think somehow becoming the combatant is kind of their dream, and they achieve that, something like that. So that's
Because
the pull
it's
factor.
power. Because
Yeah.
they feel like they're getting a power
Yes.
which they didn't have. Because Aceh is a very fundamentalist community. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. During that time, I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
And but of course, not all young women feel that way, because the young women who feel that way mostly come from the rural areas, which
Mhm.
is very much targeted by Indonesian military as a stronghold of Free Aceh movement. So that's why then they feel insecure, yeah. Because some of the young women who live in town, they're enjoying still the life, even though not so free, but they can go
Mhm.
to when they can. They went to the school, they went to the university, so they don't have any imagination to be part of the combatant, something like that. So uh, that's the situation at the time. But I think the total number of the female combatant, according to them, is about 2,500. And I asked,
Mm.
how do you count them? They said that it was the way, because we saw all of the female combatant. We were at the same camp. We were trained at the same time. And we come all over from the Aceh area, something like that. So imagine, among let's say 25,000 combatant, uh, 10% are female
Mhm.
combatant at the time.
Actual combatants, Arifa. I mean, not
Yep.
just people who are helping by cooking, by taking care of the wounded. Actual combatants.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, they they all were combatant. They have been trained as military officer, but then after they finish the training, of course, then there is they were be divided. into the real combat, who really carry arm and gun, and who have to cook, helping actually, because the cook and the most provider were from the people at the village level. So the the female combatant responsible to get the supply from buying rice, buying meat, or eggs, something like that. But the cook actually are people from the village. So, but they have been divided into some certain their job, including taking care of the wounded people. Yeah, they were
Arifa,
combatants.
you already mentioned the demographic, like many of those are women who were involved as combatants are from the rural areas. But
Yeah.
then again, can you tell us a little bit more about, what is the level of education of many of these
Ah,
combatants?
yes, very good question. I think the highest level of education are at the 11th grade.
So
Yeah.
very young.
So yeah. So they are not yet finished the high school basically, but most of them are only finished the junior school. So attending the 11 or 12 level, 12th grade actually. So it's quite low. Even some of them, they didn't enter school at all. Yeah. I met one of the women. She was a young widow, have one son, but then she joined also as combatant. And I asked, why you joining the combatant? Because you have kids, you have children that you need to take care, and also mother, who quite old at the time. She said, because I was so angry, because at the time they just took my brother and beat him to death. So I want to revenge, something like that. So I left my son to my mother to be taken care, and I went to the jungle and to the forest with the gum.
Okay.
So
Arifa, can we also know if many of these women eventually married fellow combatants? They get married to other fighters within the GAM, or they married outside of the organization?
um, if I look at 10 female combatants that I interviewed many times, actually one of them, sorry, not one of them, two of them didn't marry until now. And
Okay.
then about three widow, and the other five other they married with non-combatant.
I see.
So not all married with the combatant actually. So it's various and depend on their situation. And one of my informants said, she said that I married when I joined the GAM because I want him to take care of me when somehow I was shot to death.
Okay.
So that's why she didn't marry with a combatant, because she needs a man who take care of her when she has to come back, or she has to have wounded, or have take care of her body, something like that. So there are
So,
many situations, I think, but not all married with a combatant at the time.
so finally, Arifa, when the Gerakan Aceh Merdeka signed that Helsinki MOU, was it in 2008 or 2009? Uh,
MOU to the 2005.
2005, okay, as early as
Yeah,
2005. And then there was now a DDR, a demobilization and reintegration
yeah,
program of all GAM combatants and fighters. I understand that for the men, of course, they were also given, a program like they can be part of livelihood trainings and enterprises,
yeah,
and then when they were going back to their communities, for them to be accepted back to their communities, there was some sort of a community-based type of
yeah,
reconciliation program also for them. But how about for the women? Was it
yeah.
different when the women finally went back to their kampong, to their villages? Were they
Yes.
accepted easily as compared to the male combatants?
Yeah. That's my main point, Aisa. Actually, that's the gender has been contested because, as I mentioned before, during the conflict, there is no barrier, obstacle for women to joining the confiance. Yeah. So, and everyone proud of them at the time joining the movement. But when the peace has been signed and the peace building has been started with the DDR and then reintegration process. And I would like to talk three type of reintegration. First is the social reintegration. Second is economic, and then political. For the social integration, I have to say that all the combatant, male and female, had no barrier at all, had no problem to come back to their own village, the community and people. Yeah, as I mentioned before, one push factor for them to joining the guerrilla or the opposition movement is really also represent their community or village. So that's why there was no barrier for them to reintegrate socially. Yeah. But this is very interesting regarding the economic reintegration. You are right, Aisa. For female combatant, it was not that easy to get access for the economic reintegration. And my research found that there was a kind of that the female combatant finally they are not homogeneous. There were so many layers among the female combatant after the peace has been signed. When I mentioned about the layers, because I found that some of them get all the access for the economic reintegration resources, job, and then reintegration fund, opportunity to taking part on the process, something like that. They got all that access, but most of them they didn't get the access,
Yeah.
and that's
By
why
the way,
I was curious
yeah.
why who get the benefit, and then finally I found that I combine all the commander, female combatant commander, 10 of them I interviewed deeply, and then I try to look at who got the benefit,
Yeah.
and
By
finally,
the way, Arifa, I saw a research that was done about what happened
yeah,
to these women on Inong Bali, and
yes,
that they have these women with their children have resorted to begging for for their
yeah,
livelihood. There doesn't seem to
well,
be much support.
yeah, that's true. There are so many cases like that actually. And who are they? And then I found that the female combatant who didn't have any what do you call it, kinship or family relative with men in power, that's the woman who didn't get the access. So in order to get the access of the beneficiary of the reintegration, you have to have men in power that will say that, oh yeah, you can give this to this woman, something like that. If you didn't have any kinship with the man in power, then you will didn't get any of the beneficiaries politically and socially. Yeah, economically, sorry, because social there were no problem with the social reintegration, but economic and political reintegration, you have to have men permission and support in order to get them, something like that.
That's
That's
a
why it is
very
very.
important finding, Arifa. That's a very important finding. And I think that is
Mm,
one a finding that we can, that can actually launch more research, in the region, especially with ASEAN Women Peace Registry, since we're talking about women peace security agenda. That
yeah.
finding can actually also be verified, in the Bangsamoro post-conflict
Mm, yeah.
and also in other places, even like in Sri Lanka, with
Yeah.
what happened in Sri Lanka. So that in itself is to me is so important, and thank you for doing that good research.
Arifa,
Yeah.
the research that you did, Do you have any sense of what's happened since you did the research? Is the government, the federal government, for instance, in Aceh, have they changed the way that they're reaching out and reintegrating these combatants, or not much has changed?
At the beginning, when the peace has been signed, actually, there is no single word of female combatant in it. Yeah. If you look at the Helsinki Memorandum of Understanding, they only mention combatant. And then the government at the time translated into male combatant. So, of course, the first who got the benefit of the reintegration were male combatant. So, no female combatant at all. But then I think the female combatant did a kind of movement that they demanding and make a noise that we are also combatant. So we also demand the reintegration fund, something like that. And then the person in charge at the time changed the kind of internal setting up for the integration, and then they included the women. But as I mentioned, not all the female combatant 2,500, yeah, only who really has the sound, the voice, and then has the kinship with the man in power get the benefit. Also the number, because even the MOU said each combatant will get 25 million rupiah, but
Mm.
in actually, they got uh, lower than that. The highest number that I got is she got, I think, only 5 million rupiah,
Five
and the
million
rest is more.
rupiah sounds very big, Arifa, but convert it to dollars. How much is 5 million rupiah?
Well, we can
Can that
divide it
buy
into
you groceries?
15,000. You can divide
15,000?
it into 15,000, I think. For I mean that 15,000 rupiah equal to $1.
So it's not as big as it
At
sounds.
all.
Not
Yeah,
at
yeah, not big at all, of course, yeah.
Yeah,
So most of them didn't get any.
yeah. That's why
So
they're
I
begging.
think, yeah. So even at certain point, the local government changed, but somehow I think the international organization who take care of the female ex-combatant.
Mm-hmm.
Our dear friend Sadia Marhaban, if you know, she at the time also because she's an elite female of gum. So she able to set up kind of a group who take care of the female combatant, the real combatant, but uh, funny, it's a bit funny story because then what she did is train the female combatant for sewing and give them sewing machine. Of course, they didn't use it because they don't used to be
They're not used to it.
tailor.
Yeah,
They were farmer. Yeah,
yeah.
when on the field. So somehow, I think the program didn't really set up nicely and didn't really look at what the female combatant need. So I think the program not continue. I think only three or 5 years after that they stop, and then
So
we see,
there's a
Yeah.
mismatch of what the combatants actually want and can do
yeah,
versus what the donor agencies are trying to give to them. Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
was doing
yes,
a
you're,
calculation.
yeah, I was just going to ask you, yes, because you've done a lot of this reviews, this analysis of the work that was being done in the Bangsamoro areas of conflict, and this looks familiar, right?
yeah,
Like
Yeah,
they don't really assess what the combatants or the communities need. They
yeah,
give what they think the communities need, right, Ayesa?
yeah,
but at the same time, Amina, I'm not sure what is happening today in BARM, but even at the early years of the Bangsamoro Development Agencies, I'm aware that the way that they were doing community livelihood planning, they actually involve, combatants, whether they are male and female, and allow them, help them out in their own planning. So I think, since that is the start of the BDA before, I'm sure that BARM is also continuing that kind of participatory and inclusive framework on getting the combatants to take part and decide for their livelihood. But I want to go back to that analysis that and finding of Arifa about how combatants, female combatants, are actually existing, in our society, and yet a lot of work is being done for them and with them. But we see that in many cases, like even in BARM right now, and same thing with Aceh, we actually do not have a full representation of the female combatant, let's say in the parliament, in politics, in the actual leadership post. So that is actually another area that we should continue to discuss. So it's like, yes, there are many women leaders, in the NGOs, in members of the parliament, but then we tend to represent the issues of the combatants. But from sister to another sister, I think that is also an internal reflection, amongst us. Why is it that we are not bringing the female combatants themselves so that they can do the work and they can represent their voice?
Yeah,
Maybe
good point,
because,
Aisa.
Arifa, maybe because, as you pointed out earlier, the levels of education are low, so maybe they cannot really compete in the political arena. But Arifa, let me ask you about the Aishia, because they are also present in Aceh, right? So how
Yeah.
is the Aishia organization helping in the reintegration process, and are there obstacles that they're facing to help
Yeah.
with female combatants reintegration?
Well, first we need to understand the context of Islam in Aceh, which is quite different with the context of Islam in Yogyakarta. Yeah. So even we are Islam, but we are not united. We are not the same because in according to the Acehnes, Muhammadiyah and Aisyah has been perceived as Wahhabi, and they don't like it. Yeah, I think in one particular areas, Muhammadiyah mosque has been burned by the Muslim Acehnes because they thought that this is not good Islam because they preach for the more the Wahhabi, something like that. So there are misunderstanding about the existence of Muhammadiyah and Aisyah in Aceh. But yes, Muhammadiyah and Aisyah is there in Aceh, but they only exist in Banda Aceh, the capital. They really didn't go to the village level, and I I think I have to say that so far even Aisyah and Muhammadiyah is the second largest Muslim organization, but actually we exist mostly at the city and the town, not really in the rural areas where people really needs more help. Yeah. So somehow in Aceh, I think the obstacle is getting more and more because the misunderstanding and the perception, and the Muhammadiyah is not really well accepted for the Acehnes, except at the town, at the big city, I think. Yeah. But interestingly, the Acehnes people, they are so happy to go to the Muhammadiyah school and hospital. In order to understand what's the Aisyah role in helping the female combatant, I think first we need to understand the Islam context in Aceh, which is in many aspects different with the Islam in other areas. And their perception about Muhammadiyah also different. They perceive Muhammadiyah as a Wahhabi group. So the Acehnis, I think they really not happy with that. So they don't really embrace the Muhammadiyah and Aisyah movement. Even they burn one of the Muhammadiyah mosques in one particular areas because they perceive again Muhammadiyah as a Wahhabi movement, something like that. But the funny thing is that the Acehnes, they were so proud with the Muhammadiyah and Aisyah hospital and school because they know they are more modern, they provide more advanced curriculum, something like that. So they're happy to put their children in the school and then went to the Muhammadiyah hospital. But they don't like the Muhammadiyah as an Islamic organization with their Islamic teaching, something like that. They still don't accept that.
Yeah.
I think most of them, when I interview, they say that Muhammadiyah is not good. They are Wahhabi. We have to.
Yeah. I actually agree with that, Amina. I've
Ayesa?
seen it. I've seen
Ayesa?
it.
Ayesa, just a minute, nawala na naman. Arifa, your audio disappeared again.
Okay, maybe
Oh
I
my
can start it.
goodness!
Okay, there you
Okay.
go. Okay, Ayesa, go.
So I can actually testify to what Arifa said, Amina. I've been to Aceh a couple of times, and I have many Achenese female friends. And yes, everything that Arifa said is true. You know, especially among Achenese women, they also have this great history of leadership among in their in their own right to self-determination struggle. In fact, some of the leaders before, this was during the early years of the conflict, not only with even before with the conflict with Jakarta, but also the conflict with the Dutch and the other foreign invaders. Some of the leaders were actually women. uh, Very famous Achenese women leaders. And then, as Arifa said, yeah, it's actually good that Arifa is saying these things so that hopefully our audience will realize that even among within Muslim societies, like
Yeah.
Indonesia, it's such a big Muslim country, we do have all these nuances. So we
Mm-hmm.
cannot be lumped together that the way that we practice Islam and how Muslims are in one country is the same from Aceh to Jakarta to Bandung to Batam. So it's good that Arifa mentioned these things.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question from one of our. There were supposed to be two young people, staffers from the Bangsamoro Transition Authority who join us, but they're having connectivity problems with Maguindanao. So one question that they have, Arifa, it looks like the reintegration of the combatants, there has been injustice there, excluding the female ex-combatants. And the question is has this led to a cycle of injustice in the present society in Aceh?
Hmm. Yeah, very tough question. Well, unfortunately, Aceh, the post conflict of Aceh, getting more and more conservative in the way that they put women really back to the home, back to the domestic area. So whenever you or the Acehnes face the local election, for example, there will be very massive campaign against women nominated themselves as representative at the local legislatures, for example, not say as the executive leader. They will say no, don't vote for women because women supposed not to be a leader. That's a very public has been said by Islamic leader, especially at the village level. So that's another obstacle why, for example, for female combatant, it's very hard to nominate themselves. Yeah. If they able to nominate, then their organization or the political party of the ex-GAM, for example, they will not support.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're running out of time, Arifa. And what I
Mm.
wanted to ask, if you would like to share message of hope to our listeners that what's happening in Aceh is not the end of it. That there's still a lot that's being done by groups like ASEA, by the ASEAN Women for Peace Registry, by Arifa Rahmawati. What is it that we can do to help improve the situation?
Sure. Thanks, Amina. First, there is no post-conflict for women, because even the fighting, the war was end, but the violence are still there structurally, culturally. Yeah, so feminists will reject the post-conflict situation, because for women, they in their day life they have to struggle against the violence that disabling them to participate as a citizen, something like that. Yeah. So therefore, I think Aisha mentioned about that we need to do some more research in order to make these findings louder and make voice about that. And the second, I think, if we have or joining organization by internationally, regionally, we need to look at this in the very bottom of the female or women layers in Aceh. Yeah, because after the peace has been signed, actually the female combatant are at the very bottom of the male or women layer, female layer actually, because we realize women are not unite. We are very heterogeneistic based on our identity, based on our social situation, economic situation. So, but the female combatant are at the very bottom level in this sense. So, I think we need to take care of them, because if not, then we do not know whether there will be more radicalism there, or they did nothing. We did nothing to help people to get peace, especially for the female combatant, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to add quickly to what I've learned, from Arifa's sharing on her 6 year of study on gender and in conflict and in peace in Aceh. It's but understandable that even this idea of feminism, can be, is strongly rejected, especially in Muslim society. But then when we talk about really about the changes, in a conflict to peace society like Aceh and Bangsamoro regions, we should just simplify the question then, that has the peace uh, changed the situation or life of the women, for the better? Because if it did not have any changes at all, then, as Arifa said, the women continues to be marginalized as a sector. So I think that is one takeaway that I learned from this chit chat with Arifa. And thank you so much, Arifa, for sharing really your extensive in this research. So hopefully we can, come up with something and continue to work, and as you
Yeah,
mentioned,
sure.
focus especially on the female combatants in all those
Yeah,
in these post-conflict societies.
yeah.
Amina?
Thank you so much, Arifa, for joining us. Ayesa has expressed my hope that you, Ayesa, me, the sisters in the ASEAN Women for Peace Registry, we could really come together and start looking into
Yeah,
cases like
sure.
what's happening in Aceh. What is it that
Yeah.
we can contribute to improve the situation a bit? But in closing, my dear listeners, I worry after listening to all of the news about what's happening in Afghanistan, for instance, a year
Mm.
after the Americans left Afghanistan, it looks like the situation of women there and young girls has gone back like a generation.
Yeah.
So young women, young girls can no longer go to school. Women have been kicked out of the workplace. They're not working in their jobs anymore. And I found it, Arifa, particularly bothersome when one newscaster was saying that one of the mullahs said that the best hijab for women is to stay at home. And with that, I think Arifa, Ayesa, and I are going to start thinking tonight about that message and
Yeah.
hope and pray, Ayesa, Arifa, that that kind of thinking never takes root in Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and in our Muslim communities in Southeast Asia. So thank you so much, Arifa, for joining us and sharing your,
It's my
your
honor to be
expertise.
here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hope we can have a chit chat later. And
All the
good
Absolutely.
luck
best
with the
to your
program.
work. All the best to your work.
Yeah.
So this is Amina Rasul from the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, thanking all of our listeners for joining us on this very interesting and sometimes very bothersome, very intriguing episode on She Talks Peace. Ayesa?
And thank you again, Arifa, for sharing a lot of things today. And we hope to see everybody next time, to see and hear, and for our other listeners to listen to us more in the next She Talks piece. Bye, everybody.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.
She Talks Peace is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Network Asia and Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. For more information, check out their website at podcastnetwork.asia and podmetrics.co.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.